Well, I'm going to be a little bit silly and introduce Megan, who we all know, but you know, it seems like she's a hard woman to keep up with because she keeps getting more books and more prizes. And right now, we know that she has an MFA from International Creative Writing from UNLV, but that doesn't change. Yay. And now you have four full length collections: Gravel Ghost, The Dark's Humming, and that won the Lyrebird Award, and Grief Flowers, and then her little beautiful children's book, These Words I Shape for You. She's won the, is it COG Award? Do I say it that way? Am I right? Okay. The Beulah Rose Poetry Prize, Pablo Neruda Prize, and she's editor of Pyrene's Fountain and Comstock Review, along with you there. And if you haven't, we have more copies of her book. If you don't have any, there's nothing like Before the Fevered Snow. I think each one of your books, I don't know how you do it. It's like, it's just completely a different dimension of you, and it's lovely. So if you don't have it, you can get it from our website. If you're in town, you can come by the store. And we do have some public hours now. And we also have call ins if you don't feel like going into a bookstore, and we'll do curbside. We have private appointments too. So, all kinds of ways. But be sure you do get it one way or the other. And now is Suzanne's coming in. No, they're not done with you yet, Megan.
That's cool. Bring them all in. It's a
Yeah.
good day for
So
poetry.
so we can all mute when Megan starts reading, and then I'm sure there'll be questions. So then we can unmute, and you can always, clap or whatever you want to do visually. But so I'm excited. I want you to get going here.
Thanks. I was joking with my friend last night that we need to develop scorecards for these poetry readings so we can like hold up signs that are like nailed the landing and really great things. But sure, thank you for the introduction, Susan. And it's lovely to see your face. I miss the bookstore and all of the lovely people there. I did
Yeah.
a by appointment shop the other day, and it was kind
Uh-huh.
of dreamy because I think I was the only one in there, employees, and it was very very dreamy experience.
Your
So
very own bookstore. Yeah. Just for you.
it was awesome. So thank you, and thank you everybody for joining today. I know it's the middle of the afternoon, and who knows what's going on in the world right now. So thanks for taking the time to share this space with me. And I'm really looking forward to the questions and answers after and connecting a little bit. So I hope you stick around and we can share some laughs and some poetry nerdiness. That'll be great. Getting a little weird around here staring at these walls. So it's nice to see all these beautiful faces.
And do mute, people. I'm going to even mute myself.
Right on. So I'll read from Before the Fevered Snow. This book came out April 1st. I call it my pandemic baby. And I'm just really grateful for any opportunity to share this work. This is my heart right here. This is the last couple years of my life. And I worked really hard on this book, and the editors at Stillhouse Press worked tirelessly for this book. And so any chance I get to share these poems is very meaningful. So thanks. Every time that I get to read these poems, I try to look at them from the perspective of where I'm sitting now. The world is moving around us so quickly and so much is unfolding. And so I try to greet these poems for what they're saying to me today, not as much for what they were saying to me when I read them or wrote them the first time. So I found two that I'll start with today that seem to have a little extra meaning today. And who doesn't like starting with a poem about Putin? So, Putin on horseback.
Megan, you're muted. Megan, you're muted. Unmute.
How much was I muted for?
Like just the beginning.
Start over, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, start over.
All right. So, Putin on horseback. Thank you for telling me, Connie. When I told a friend that my mother rode horses, she said, "I'm not that kind of a person, the kind who needs to tame something larger than themselves, to break them." I thought of Putin, straddled bareback in the sun, and what trot must sound like in Russian, if it is ripened in the mouth for a second before the spittle and push of air. My father-in-law sleeps in our basement listening to a small radio. I can hear preachers raising their octaves of faith in Russian. It pushes through the vents. When I ask him to translate what they are saying, it is mostly end of days prophecy, God as command, as fury to be released onto the world. The kind of fear that tries to break a soul. But for him, it is lullaby, the dialect of home calming him to sleep. When the heater kicks in, it covers their voices with a continuous whistle that sounds like a missile flinging past, never landing. I study that photo of Putin, the horse grazing at the earth, weary from the weight of such a man pulling the reins too hard. But the way its eyes narrow is anything but broken. The horse has trained himself to see the slot of light and field between braids of barbed wire. All right. Can everybody hear me okay? Give me a thumbs up. I feel like my child's teacher. Everybody thumbs up. Right on. So the other poem that really stuck out for me was a poem about the wildfires. And so I hope that everybody, all my friends who are in California, are staying safe and that their families are safe. I was reading the news again this morning, and oh my gosh.
Saying it's bad.
Yep.
Bad. Yeah.
I can't even imagine right now. We've been through a few here. That's what I wrote this poem about, but oh, my heart just breaks reading these, especially now during the pandemic. So I hope you guys all are staying safe and that your families are. A town praying for rain. The man at the bar says the moon isn't full enough for her milk to drop. I plug a quarter in the jukebox and dance anyway. The bass beat of slurry planes bellying low overhead. Someone spills a beer that hints of cinder at the tail end. It is in our hair, the ash, fine coating windows and cars, the hills ghostlit with loss. The waitress says it looks like sunset at noon and calls her children to see if the road home has closed. I drive home the way of grasslands, past 19 flags planted into the earth. Horses flank the side of the road galloping. For those who cannot haul out, it has come to this, stamping a name and address along the body of the horse before setting it free. One of the, one of the things that I was thinking about, so at the beginning of the pandemic, I started drawing, which I've never done before. I couldn't really write, which is interesting because I have written through most of the major traumatic and stressful periods of my life. I wrote through my son's speech loss. I wrote about several miscarriages as I was experiencing them. I wrote through my mother's death. And then when the pandemic came, I was just without words. And it was a very unusual experience for me. But I started drawing instead, and that imagery kind of translated. And I started almost obsessively drawing ravens. And I don't know why, but that's just where I needed to be and what I needed to be expressing, I guess, at this time. And I began thinking about, well, the ravens are in my work everywhere. And so I went through this book last week and I looked at all of the poems that had birds in them. So I thought I could just do that. I'll pick the poems that have birds. But there are pretty much wings in every single poem. It's birds. We have hummingbirds, ravens, crows, you name it. And so I loved that my attention was drawn there, and I was able to see these poems in a new way as well and kind of examine that symbolism. And when I started to research that, I read about the Welsh hero Bron, who's the holder of ancestral memories. And that's the symbol for wisdom and knowledge in the raven right there. And it made a lot of sense to me because I started writing these poems when my mother lost her memories and her sight as well. And so I think a lot of what I was trying to do was hold on to that or carry it forward in some format. And the raven became that messenger. So I'll share a couple of those poems. I will explain. The black cat she named after a stiff Russian drink, and that slept on my childhood bed, crawls out from under some orbit. Neither of us can remember the exact shade of red lipstick she was always wiping clean. If given the gift of another question, I would choose one that could unpack like nesting dolls. I would ask again about my birth story, how I almost arrived in a donut shop, how a city bus driver stopped and picked her up, going off route to the hospital. It feels important to plant this here. The hospice workers say only hours might be left. Nobody knows for sure. I read that I was an egg in her body when she was tucked and growing in her mother. That to find my true age, I am to subtract 20 weeks from the moment of her birth. This means that she knew the specks of daughters I carried short, and I was never alone in their loss. But I am the one trimming our line, the last wooden doll fit into a thimble. I sing off key and light a candle, remembering her nightgown like smoke, and how, as she's leaving, I watch everything ash. A wince split into every oncoming joy. My heart squeezes 3 times. I didn't mark my book today. I usually do. I'm turning pages furiously.
Yeah, but look at all your clap marks.
Look at the what?
Look at all your clapping marks. They went away. There was a lot of them.
Kitty. Cool. I didn't see them. But you can see my desk. It's like a beautiful mind happening. There are about 300 Post-its that you can't see on my computer. So forget-me-nots. Today, my mother forgot the word for bathroom while she was in one. She said, dry room, no, wet room, no, tell me. Then, what are the others called? I'd like to walk them. At one point, someone taught me a word I've forgotten. A room I was already inside. A marriage, a country, a war. a man's finger cuffed around my wrist. Someone promised it is common when learning another language to lose pieces of your mother tongue. Where the bar lights are also a call to prayer, and the flowers aching the field are no less yellow, the spider's bites still poisoned when I cannot say their name. My mother will soon lose my own, and even though I understand the way of things, I hear the horses in mourning nip at the electric fence, and I will not have the word for shock. I also just realized I think I just read the only 2 poems that don't have a raven in them after telling you about the raven.
Well, you can still read some Raven.
Yeah, no problem. But I just realized that, like, yeah, no, those are like the only 2 in here that don't have a raven in them. So, I would like to share the title poem, which I don't think has a raven in it either. You're just gonna have to buy the book to find all the raven poems. This is just what's gonna happen now. This book originally, the manuscript that I submitted to Stillhouse Press had a different name. It was entitled Paper Mother. And it actually it was an entirely different book. And so when the editor phoned, his name's Tommy, and he's brilliant, to let me know that they'd like to publish my book, I hesitated because I had already taken and revised it to the point where it was not recognizable. And I was very nervous to say, well, that's cool. How do you feel about looking at a different book of mine entirely? So they were open to it, and I think it was like a week later I was able to sign my contract for this. And then we changed the name to Before the Fevered Snow. And I was happy with that because I actually really love the title poem. Before the Fevered Snow. There was an eyelet and bright button, hair snipped from sleeping others and wed around my finger. You cut it with your tongue, and the light that came from your mouth burned hot, so we didn't need to speak. I watched instead your chest rise as if with filament, the stuff of love, burning us clean. When an eyelash slipped onto my cheek, you prayed, a God wish, hallucinating faith. I left that morning, your fever lifted, and we woke to April snowfall, window fog in bloom, an unsettled quiet without the first sounds of breaking. Just the ryegrass bending under my feet, the dew outstretched on the leaves overhead, the omen of it all. And it does seem to always snow in April here, I have learned. It is a truly bizarre experience. And I'll share just a couple more here. I had the opportunity to be part of this really cool podcast. It's called Endless Beautiful, if you want to look it up later. And they invite artists online. And Mariah, actually, who's with us today, was the one who helped me to get a spot for this podcast. So thanks, Mariah. But they play all of these captured sounds, and then the artist creates. During that time period, they kind of take a break, and then the viewers or listeners can also create a piece of art, whether that's writing or graphic art or something on the paper that's inspired by these sounds. And I was really terrified going in. I didn't know if I was going to be able to actually write anything during that time period. And a lot of the sounds that they played while I was listening were golf balls being washed. That's a little out there for me, but miraculously I was able to complete an entire poem from start to finish, and I don't think it even changed through the editing process as it went into this book. So this is the poem that I wrote for that podcast. So imagine you're hearing the sounds of golf balls being washed as I'm reading. I am told the dream can only be interpreted by the dreamer. But my child and I have the same one. He is drowning. I see him lumped, a wavy tuft on the bottom. I ask the nearest man, capable of holding his breath, to dive in after. Any air I catch is sharp with rust. When he emerges, I press on his chest until a rib cracks, but he wakes before his lungs can gasp in heart rhythm. He thanks me for being the falcon who broke the surface to grip him, and also the one holding space for his return. He remembers slipping down. I remember that waiting is an anticipation of grief. An hour before the light will rise like an alarm of fur along morning's spine, he disappears, comes back into view, padding down the hall, glancing sidelong at my door, thanking me for not scratching him with my talons. And that's actually a very true story. I had a dream that my child was experiencing that, and then when he woke up, he told me he'd had the same dream. So we're learning how to swim. Needless to say. Let's see. I think it's about 2 more, okay, Susan? Yeah, all right, 2 thumbs up. I feel like reading a poem about an emu. That feels right. Waiting for the promised snow. Our marriage therapist slips, says, "This is your eternal struggle. One pursues and one withdraws." I think of the emu chasing a man with half a sandwich across a parking lot. It happened somewhere, and the man was hungry. The forecast is hoggish, promising a reckoning, 2 feet of mountain snow, but the anchors cannot agree on a start time. When it comes to being buried alive, the end time feels more consequential. I would like to know when the silence that whisks between tall pines will lighten. I'm in it for breath, for the ravens and crows, the peregrine falcons that hunt what storms drive us into the open. I've made a stack of sandwiches, wrapped them in foil, left them on the porch. No one should be running when the stakes are that high, the ice that hidden and dark. I'm sorry, not enough salt to clear the road. And I will end with a somewhat hopeful poem. Turning into another year. This year will be better. We will study the wood frog that comes back to life after a long freeze as curiosity, not metaphor. I will sage the corners of my mouth and learn to tolerate the texture of popsicle sticks. I will depress my breath long enough to wave at the other mothers in the drop-off line without cursing, without crossing myself as elegy. This year will be filled with forgetting, which is gutting. Her struggle to summon my name when I unknot her hair, stitch her coffee with cream. What existed in her blood months before I was born. I will practice motherlessness, which cannot be perfected because of memory, mine. I will practice making my children shatterproof. I have been given no other choice. I will teach my son how to read cursive as our breath in the still cold morning. I will go hunting with a fist of feathers and show my unchecked skin to the teeth of something feral, a black bear or mountain lion, my softest parts reddened by sun, marked as mistake, or deliciously rare. Thank you.
That was wonderful. It just seemed very fast. I saw your animated poem, Lullaby. In fact, I tried to get it on my computer. We tried at open mic to get it, but we couldn't get the sound going. It was there on the computer, but it wouldn't go. But do you want to read that one?
Sure. I am happy to read that one. Yeah, and if is there a way that you can share the link maybe in the comments? Do you see
Yeah.
it?
Yeah, I can, let's see. I'm not going to do it now because the whole thing might collapse, but but we'll put it on the we'll try to get it on the website when we put the recording of this up there too, because you will be recorded and people can send people to come hear you again. I'd
Awesome.
like to hear you again. There's very, very wonderful poems.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm happy to share Lullaby. It's funny, I usually shy away from reading this because they did that recording of it, and her Soma is the name of the beautiful woman whose voice just made this poem come to life in that recording. And so every time I read it, I'm like so stunning. It's really perfect, but happy to share it. Lullaby. 1. Words dull us drowsy, so we tuck books into bed. In one, a herd of elephants lives under the surface and holds up the weight of this world. When one bows his head, weary, we quake. In another, a catfish swims beneath the surface. When he thrashes about, the world shakes. Our stability is at the mercy of inhumed hearts. 2. I trace circles along my son's back, the river of nerves under a ridgeline of bone, the smooth corners that wear memory down to a science. I dream that fish have no memory. I dream from what I have been told. But catfish can recall the sound of a human voice 5 years after. When I hum this lullaby, it is to calm the tusks, the caudal fin, the myths under this world that hold us steady and let us glimpse dreams before we are rocked to sleep.
Lovely.
Thank you.
Oh, Megan, if there was no chance to like even the slightest bit that I could love you more, I love you more. Like you're just like, oh, I love you. And you're so beautiful. You are such a beautiful person. My gosh, I love seeing you in this light. It's so different. Oh, I just love it. I love you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Megan, I was wondering if you would read that line about the wood frog again for me.
Yes. Let me.
Thank you. I wasn't sure. Am I supposed to put my picture, my questions in the chat, or is this okay?
This is fine.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Perfect.
I'll see if there are questions in the chat too. But go ahead.
Yeah, the poems it's really hard to get an entire poem listening the first time. They're so layered. And even like I was saying, when I, try to prepare for a reading, I'm looking at these poems from a different place and I see all of these different things coming up that just mean something. And so feel free to ask. I'm very happy to reread anything. It's really hard to get in one sitting. So it's turning into another year. This year will be better. We will study the wood frog that comes back to life after a long freeze as curiosity, not metaphor.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Just open the chat. I'm sorry if anybody asked questions.
Yeah, I'm looking, when were most of the poems in this book written? looks like.
So I actually wrote through my mother's illness. Writing kind of saved me. It gave me this way to both record what was happening, process what was happening, and then take it and try to make it into something really beautiful, so that it wasn't just sorrow and loss.
Yeah, I was just wondering on that note. I wrote crazily during Russ's hospice. Did you find? But now I'm a little bit blocked. Did you, after your mom died, did you find that there was a quiet period, or were you still writing? Yeah. Okay.
There's been a quiet period. I did put together a chapbook, but it's not ready for the world yet. It's something that's still in progress, but it feels very disconnected at the moment. I just think I'm trying to find the language for what we're experiencing right now. I think after the kind of shock of grief, there is that time period where you're trying to find the language.
Yes.
Yeah, so absolutely.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Someone else have a comment or a question for her?
I have a question.
Okay, Dee?
Is that a sandwich behind you on the table?
I wouldn't be surprised though.
Just wondering.
Sandwiches are big around here.
I have a question.
Yeah.
How long would you say it took you to write each poem? I guess, I don't know, just rough. I know sure some took longer than others are shorter, but how, like, does it just come to you, or does it actually require quite a bit of thought?
So I'm a weird writer, I guess. I've done a lot of research on how other people, what their creative process looks like and how they write the poems and what that, that time period looks like. And I will, I guess, carry the poem with me before it gets down to the page. And sometimes I don't even know I'm doing it. And I kind of walk around with it and I let it, be part of the world and take its shape. And so the poems tend to come out very quickly when I do sit down. I've also kind of had to train myself to write that way because staying home with 2 kids, one with special needs, there aren't a lot of opportunities to sit quietly. The moment I do try to sit down, someone's yelling for a sandwich. So I have to be very precise and have a lot of faith that when I do show up, when I'm able to, that poem's going to be there and that it will come out. I've written entire chapbooks in one sitting, which is a really bizarre experience. I've had 20 plus poems come out in a 2-hour time span before, and then I've spent 3 weeks on one poem in another instance. So yeah, it kind of depends on the poem itself, and it fights for what it wants to be a lot of the times, not what I want it to be. So
Can I just add something? Megan and I are really good friends, so the only quiet time we get on the phone is when we're talking. I'm a grandma, mom, grandma. I can't talk to you, so we have little disjointed conversations, right?
Nope.
Yeah.
Poems better too when they're a little disjointed.
They're kind of fun. They're their own poem. Yeah.
Yeah. So I see there's a question about how do you edit. Most of my poems come out whole, and I will go through and try to make it as precise as possible with editing. So it's usually trying to find the right shape, because I'll just write in a block a lot of times, and then I'll go through and I'll read it out loud, and I will break the lines based upon my breath. And so I do that as a form of editing, and then I'll go through and try to sharpen some of the imagery or play with the language a little bit to make it a little more unexpected. But a lot of times the poems just kind of zoom onto the page and they're there, and I'm grateful, and I don't question it. Yeah, does that answer it? Cool.
Megan?
Yes.
I've heard, yeah, I've heard you speak a number of times before, and I know that you addressed this, but I want to ask it again. As you're walking and as you're going through life, and it kind of reminds me of that Indian, Native American, Navajo, walking in beauty, that you walk in beauty. And when these words come to you, when a language comes to you, and it seems like just the right visual, the right words, and then when you sit down to write, have you taken any notes as you're walking, or does it just all blossom on the page from your experience?
So sometimes there'll be a line that I'll catch as I'm moving through my day, and I will try to put it on my phone. I have the little notes portion.
Okay. Yeah.
Or I've even used my phone to call Paul, or taken Paul's phone and called myself and left a voicemail. If I don't want to do that, I can use the voice app too, but a lot of times I'll just grab it, hit, because we're on the call list, just hit it and then leave myself a voicemail with it to come back to it. But I don't really journal. I don't keep a diary or a journal or anything like that. I just have this weird faith that when I do sit down, it will be waiting.
But thank God you take notes at least a little bit, because I would be terrified if that just all cohesed in the moment that you get to write it.
And that's happened. I've lost
Yeah, oh, I'm sure it does.
a great image or like the perfect word and then just gone. It's happened. Yeah.
Someone wants to know what you're working on now. But you did say a chap book, but maybe more any theme going on?
Yes. So I have been working with my father, and we have been sorting through my grandfather's letters home from World War II and transcribing them. So a majority of them are written in pencil on this wax paper, and they were kept in an attic for quite some time, so they're really hard to read. And they're not organized, but my father and I have been going through and working on these, and I'd really love to turn that into a book. So that's where I've been spending my time.
We would love that too. That was from Connie. But then someone wants to know, Martin wants to know what it's like being a reader editor for 2 magazines publisher. What is that like?
It's busy. It gives me a lot of practice at reading poems and reading them quickly. But so Pyrene's Fountain is open from May to June, and so it doesn't interfere too much with Comstock Review. The reading periods are kind of staggered that way, so I'm just constantly reading instead of overlapping. But it's good. I'm not the strongest at grammar. Everything is just kind of intuitive that I do, and obviously, I went to graduate school and I've had a lot of academic work in that area, but it doesn't come naturally for me. A lot of people really love grammar and they can identify everything and this, and that takes me some time and some effort. And so having that as a constant in my life is actually really good, because it's the more left brain side to creating and my own writing. And it helps me to kind of look and be more analytical and thoughtful about when I do write a poem, about the shape or the word choice or the conjugation. And so it's just more practice.
Mm-hmm.
And it's awesome to be able to read all these poems as well. I mean, I feel like it's a gift. It's this little window into somebody's heart, somebody's soul, somebody's world. I get to read a lot of that, and it's really, really, really cool. It makes me feel better about us as human beings.
Thank you. All right,
What's
guys.
chapbooking?
More. You
What's
have a question?
chapbooking?
Oh, a
Or
chapbook?
what is it? Yeah.
Yeah, it's basically a smaller compilation. So usually about 30 to 45 pages of poetry instead of 65 plus. Yeah. There's a whole history behind it if you want to look up chapbooks. It's pretty cool.
Yes, and you have several already.
Hey, Megan.
Is that Deb?
It is Deb. Hello. I have a question I don't know how to formulate perfectly. And it has to do with whether you have an experience or a visual, like an image, or the words actually come, like the sound and the feeling of the words in your body and breath. Like, does it kind of vary which one comes up for you first, or is it like a weaving together of all of that?
It's different every single time. Sometimes I will catch a line or a phrasing, and I'll carry that with me for a little bit until it tries to find its shape and its home inside of a poem. Sometimes it's an image that I will see and will just strike me as needing to be put into poetry. And sometimes it's this weird gut feeling of just needing to sit down and write. It's not a feeling of responsibility or duty. It's more of there's literally something that needs to come forth. And so that will draw me to the page too. And music as well. Yeah, so all of the above.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, I'm thinking about how you work with children around.
Yeah.
That must be quite something. So how does that work out?
It is. And when I first committed to trying to find writing time, so what I did when both my kids were in their home again now from school, but I would just try to find these little lapses in the day where I could sit and write. So whether they were in the bathtub or they were watching a cartoon or we were playing, I could just, scribble down a couple lines on my laptop or try to, get anything done. But it became this commitment. And then I really, in the beginning, was kind of frustrated because I was having trouble following that thread. So I would start it and then I'd be interrupted and then I'd try to come back and pick it up. And instead of doing that, I learned that I'm capable, and it actually works out for me pretty well of just letting that thread go and coming back and picking something else up and just trying to take it from there. So a lot of my poems tend to kind of wander a bit, and I've been told that they do that. They kind of travel down the page and they go very different places. And I think that's kind of a byproduct of how I am going to the page and coming back and forth, kind of being interrupted by weird things, and then just allowing those things to come into the poems. So not keeping them closed off, but just allowing other things to come in that maybe wouldn't otherwise.
Yeah, that sense of moving from place to place, it's probably why I realize I'm so attracted to your work, because you don't stop that. You don't expect yourself to be on one subject, that there's something instinctive about the movement. I don't know. I don't know if you know Sarah Vapp's work, but she just wrote a book called Winter. And the whole thing is about the interruptions of the children. And so that I just think I think it's extremely important what you're saying, because it's having to, the body's telling you have to let this poem out in the midst of whether it's the caregiving I did or the baby when the baby. So yeah, I like knowing that's in the poem in some subtle way.
It is.
I'm buying your book and I'm very excited about finally reading it. Sorry for so long.
Yeah, if you don't mind messaging me the author and title, I'd love to check out that book too. That sounds
I wrote a review. It's supposed to be in something called Matter, but I haven't heard, and I'm hoping that it's anyway. But I will certainly do that. Yes.
Cool. Yeah, it's amazing what happens when you just open it up and let everything come in instead of close it off and try to take too much control over it.
And then when the poem's ready to come, there's almost a physical response where you have to go and let it come. It now has to speak. So I really get that. Thank you for describing it so well.
Thanks.
It's lovely.
Well, this has been very lovely. wonderful conversation.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have a comment or a question? Because I bet her kids are wanting her.
I just have a comment. I love Megan's work. I really think that has tremendous depth, and I'm just really feel happy that we're connected as poets, and I just really am happy that we have a friendship, and I think your poems are amazing.
Love you. Thank
They
you.
I'll talk
are
to you
amazing.
soon.
Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Thank
I
you,
mean,
Peregrine, for hosting this.
oh, yes.
Nice of you.
Well, it's wonderful that Megan will come and read for us. And
Indie bookstores. Yay.
yes, yes,
Right.
yes.
Yeah.
So if you don't have the book, we've got it. And, but wherever, get it, because it's, you know, then you get to savor. And I found some of your poems. I find different things in them when I go back on another day and another day. And so that's, they're rich, very rich poems.
Also,
So
Megan,
thank you, Megan.
I copied the comments. I'll send them to you so you can have them.
Yeah.
That's
I didn't even
great.
know there were comments. Thank you.
A lot of wonderful, all good comments.
I'll have to read another book so that next time we can have the reading in person at the beautiful book.
Yes, yes. John, you're the one that talked about having it in person. But then I thought, well, I don't want to wait that long. So I hope you don't mind that we had this event. I think it went really well.
Absolutely.
Thank you for doing it. Thank you, everyone, for coming. I just feel
Thank you,
weird every
Megan.
time. I feel weird every time I end a meeting when we can't stand around and talk to each other. It still feels weird that way, doesn't it?
It does. You just want to go give everybody a hug.
Yeah, give everybody a hug
Yeah.
and chat, and yeah, the things we can't do. That's the one thing we miss. One of the things, but an important thing. But so we're gonna end it. And
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye, guys. Bye, Megan. Bye, Paul and guys.
bye, everyone.